Hi, this is Patriot Station, and today we bring you day 292 of Russian invasion into Ukraine, with Olexiy Arestovich, advisor to the Office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel, and Mark Feygin, Russian opposition politician. In today's stream, they discuss situation on the front, what's happening on the southern front, isolation on certain parts of it, the intensity of war subsided on the eastern front, Bakhmut, any chances to break the line there, ninth package of anti-Russian sanctions and its probability of being adopted by Europe before Christmas. European Peace Fund is widening, more perspectives for Ukraine for the next year. New potential conflict in Kosovo. US air defense systems Patriot are being deployed on the border between Poland and Ukraine. Further supplies of weapons from Iran to Russia. Energy systems of Ukraine and how they weather shelling and winter. And probability of a nuclear strike on one of the directions. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live, day 292 with Olexiy Arestovich. Glad to see you, Olexiy. It is Monday, December 12th. Time is 1 minute past 10 in Kiev, 1 minute past 11 p.m. in Moscow. We have about 70,000 who joined us live already. 20,000 of you clicked the like button. Thank you very much for coming to join us today. We would appreciate if you share links and comment on that stream in social, so we get more people to join us while we are still live. And do not forget to subscribe to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovich, and to the Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that stream in the English language. Alright, without further ado, let's dive into the map and see what is happening on the fronts. There are no destiny-changing moves there. In Kherson region, there are several very successful hits in the last several days. A lot of mobilized troops. First of all, among the casualties, about 300 perished. Where did you hit them so effective? Is it the hotel in Melitopol? No, Melitopol hotel, that was mostly Kadyrov troops. We're talking about Kherson. Melitopol is the Zaporozhye region. Kherson, just the left bank. We caught them in their positions where they were located. I apologize, I'm en route today, so it's a little difficult for me to find the exact mention of the village where they were shelled, and I don't want to spend 5 minutes scrolling through my messages to find. I can prepare for tomorrow's stream and find the names for that. Let's take a look at Melitopol. So you've seen the video online. That was the hotel where Kadyrov troops were stated for the most part. That's probably about 200 dead as a result. Perhaps it could be not in one strike, but as a result of combined strikes, that's what they got there. A lot of goodies, a lot of presents. Also, we saw that one of the bridges near Melitopol was blown up, and here one doesn't need to be super smart or rocket scientist to figure out that what is going on is a limitation of a war theater, and we're precluding them from having a good supply line to Melitopol, and now they'll have to take a detour, because usually the war is not about tons, but about rhythms, and we're disrupting their rhythms. By the way, today is the day of Ukrainian infantry, and I happen to be part of that group of military. This is probably the largest group, which has its own aviation, or its own artillery and other branches. This is probably the only one group of military that can conduct all kinds of operations involving all kinds of components, aerial, artillery, intel, and others. So this is, they do a lot of dirty groundwork, and they're carrying out the main load of this war on their shoulders, but Congratulations with that professional holiday, my brothers and sisters in arms. Let's take a look at the eastern side, Marinka, Avdiivka, all the way up to Bakhmut. There is fighting still going there. Near Bakhmut, they're still trying to push towards Chasov Yar and Konstantinovka, but their tempos have slowed down substantially, and the weather does affect the intensity. Plus, there were some changes on this front, not in the favor of the enemy. We will not elaborate what happened, but the push is a bit slower, and they're getting pushed back much harder than before. Formally, I cannot announce why, but we can probably conclude that if somebody was freed from Kherson area on our side, they will be moved to some other place, right? So Svatova and Rubezhnaya, it's again a mix. We either get waves of them trying to run over our positions, or as they report, Ukrainian troops also penetrate their positions and try to go into some counteroffensive. They continue shelling Kharkov, Zaporozhye, Nikopol, Nikolaev, Kherson. Kherson is being shelled with field artillery. Not too precise, but notable. Alright, so that's generally it. Regarding Bakhmut, there are some conversations in the Russian media, and Kadyrov was commenting on some of that. He is referring to his own sources that the line of front near Bakhmut is moving, and that gives some hope and perspective. And hopes for what, Mark? Let me clarify that. I think they're meaning that they'll take Bakhmut, and they're mentioning that the line of Bakhmut is being pushed by General Surovikin forward. I'm not talking about details. The question is, the fight is hellish there. How can we gauge, or can you gauge, if Ukrainian line of front is strong, it will hold, or do they have chances of break it? I don't think so. I don't think they can break it. All right, as you say. Let's imagine the unimaginable. They somehow took Bakhmut. They threw everything they had and pushed the line of Surovikin further to the left. And what happens next? I don't know. You tell us. Nothing, Mark. Nothing. That's it. Bakhmut doesn't have any strategic value, even operative value. Operative tactical maybe, as the resupply or some hub, but that's about it. It's not even same value as Lysychansk or Severodonetsk. So wasting thousands, actually tens of thousands of your troops for Bakhmut, the ones who, well, that number combines everything. Killed, wounded, fell sick, captured. It's probably too much of a price even for Russia to pay for a small move of Surovikin line. Okay, let's go further. 250 plus thousand are watching us live. About a third of you clicked the like button. Please continue sharing links, because it definitely helps. And time is rather complicated with winter time. And in Ukraine, a lot of internet connection is flimsy, it's coming and going. Same situation with electricity, so people are watching it later. They are writing to my channel in personal mail. I get a lot of comments in the chat as well that many people do not get timely notifications in their chat. So whenever you all start sharing and clicking the likes, you're basically joining the effort to promote our data, and that helps those people who want to see that but have limited capabilities to be alerted about it, to be notified. It helps them to actually see it. Okay, so package number 9, sanctions package in Europe. There is still at least one active week in Europe, and I'm quoting, head of Euro Commission von der Leyen is saying that we should be able to come to an agreement about the prices for gas, natural gas, in the next several days. And that's natural gas, that's not oil, that's a new side of it. That is somewhat inspiring. Euro-Observer published today mentioned that there are also some personal actions, sanctions about TV talking head Kachevnikov, some Maria Kim, I don't know who that is, Grigory Leps, Puchkov. Puchkov is known as, and Nikita Mikhalkov, one of the movie editors. So that's somewhat a bigger fish in that media pond. So what's your opinion on that? Tell me, Mark, what's the pleasure that from Nikita Mikhalkov getting sanctions against him? It's juicy, Olexiy. This is juicy. Yeah, that Bumblebee song, remember? So that Bumblebee now got it. What do we tell him? Behrimer, I'm your new lord. Some quotes from Mikhalkov, earlier movies where he played and acted. I don't know, Mark, if you have some personal vendetta against that dude. No, not really. He's nobody for me. I just think he was so vocal about this war that he needs to be under sanctions as well. Frankly, I am very undecided about these sanctions on the persons. I'm very calm about them. If they're being punished for their propaganda, if indeed they did talk a lot about it and support war, yeah, I understand. But otherwise, other than that, I'm pretty content about that side of it. Yeah, that happens. So what's more effective? Let's look at what the things that bring real good to Ukraine. These are cutting the prices of natural gas. This is not even cutting their wings. This is cutting their feet somewhere near their knees. That'll be felt by the economy. Well, I understand your point, Olexiy, but this part of sanctions is a signal to the Russian media, to the Russian culture side. It's a signal to that Bohemian group that hits a very well-known, very well-recognized faces and creates a different atmosphere in their society. Maybe. But frankly, what did we learn from even the recent story with TV Rain? Some people don't really grab it, don't realize where they are. If Germany was not occupied in 1945, I bet there would be still some people thinking that Hitler was a great leader. And people on the Russian side, as I see, do not understand there is going to be a story of redemption, of apologies, of retributions and analysis, self-reflection, what things led them to that situation, what mistakes were made. But in order for that analysis, one needs to really understand what's going on. And the comments I see around the Mikhalkov story, they don't realize, they still do not see what brought them to this point. They don't realize how deep they are in it. And maybe from that standpoint, if there is a pressure on their cultural figures, it might change something. Let's imagine a hypothetical that those 165 media persons will actually see the light at the end of the tunnel. 166 in this list. Okay, 166. Imagine that all 166 of them even see the light and understand the atrocity of their situation, of what their country is doing. Will they go out in a public light? Will they say anything about that? I highly doubt that. So I think our only hope is on Alla Pugacheva, who initially, right as the war started, and her husband, Maxim Galkin, who started talking about it right away and had no qualms calling war, saying that it is horrible and it should be stopped. So it's difficult for me to calculate the effect of these sanctions on what? On the process of collective unconsciousness, subconsciousness of Russians, on Russian elites. We, however, know how Russian elites with criminal mind and criminal values treat cultural figures. They think they're just clowns for money. So I understand, yes, there should be included in sanctions if they were very vocal about supporting war, but I don't see that as a main key part. I think sanctions, for the most part, are most effective when they're applied to natural gas, oil, trade routes, and that. So I cannot see deeper comments about these cultural leaders, cultural figures. Okay, let's, well, I guess we'll see. Time will come, we'll see. So, another news. European Peace Fund, the one that's supplying additional weapons to Ukraine. Parel mentioned it could be increased by another 1.5 billion of euros. Oh, 3.5 billion euros. That's, what do you think? That's a good amount. That's a very good story, especially if it is spent smart. For example, either supply us with the types of weapons that are superior to Russian analogs or do not have Russian analogs, for example, air defense systems like RST or Caesar's French-made, or supply somewhat compatible in what Russia has, but in large numbers. Problem with compatible and same level, it's difficult for Europe to find large numbers of weapons at the moment. That can be easily given to Ukraine, but I suspect that it's much easier to expect some unique systems, some things that are just better than Russian. So also, I'm thinking most of these supplies will likely be coming next year, just by the cadence and the production rate and what we see with our allies. But it is still a good effort against Putin's horde. 3.5 billion, that's a good number. All right, look, Forbes published some material about the next large-scale offensive of Ukrainians will be on Zaporozhye direction, and that's American Forbes publishing. That long-awaited offensive could both liberate a big chunk of southern Ukraine and also help Ukrainian troops to approach Crimea. And as we discussed some of these shellings in Zaporozhye, they appear to be somewhat of a early precursors to probable offensive. Do you think the current weather and current disposition on the front perhaps will allow us to see that offensive? Do you mean the precursor, like the shelling, or do you mean what we create there on the front as the guys that we may do an offensive maneuver there, and maybe we'll do it someplace else? I don't know, you tell us. It's, whatever we're doing, it's good. It's achieving its results. The weather, I would not elaborate further as to the actual active motions on that specific front, but weather is definitely helping a bit. And yeah, I would say there is definitely an appeal to active actions, because public and those who are watching us and those who are reading any topics about this war, they do like to see big operations like Kherson, in Kharkiv regions, but we'll see. I'm checking the weather as we talk. I'm curious to see what the weather will look like until Christmas. Oh no, that's slightly above freezing, so as they called it, it's a Play-Doh country where you have several pounds of mud stuck to each of your shoes. So yeah, it's not going to be favorable. However, as I mentioned before, different operations are possible and probable in different weather circumstances, so shouldn't be considered as the main factor. And even Russian troops, remember, April was a pretty bad month, but in April they were very active and they disregarded the element. Okay, what do you think about the events happening in Kosovo, Olexiy? from my personal standpoint, I think it's fake, it's a made-up scenario. There is some artificial element in it, and Moscow voiced its active support of Belgrade. And frankly, I can't imagine that Kosovo and Belgrade cannot find agreement even with the participation of Euro Commission. But different observers noted that Moscow inclusion into that supposed to be a conflict is favorable for Moscow. That's somewhat important to distract, to create other sources of distraction in Europe. What do you think the perspectives of these things for the conflict? I think, Mark, that the scale of this Kosovo conflict, even if it'll reignite, versus the scale of armed conflict we have in Ukraine, it'll be very minimal destruction. Plus, I don't really believe that conflict is for real. I believe that they are doing the demonstrations and they're screaming at each other. That's okay, but I think this is all part of the trade process. This is part of them fighting for their positions, and it's, in essence, fighting, hey, make sure you give documents in that language or in that other language. And in Balkans, people do grab their weapons pretty fast at grabbing them. One would hope the previous wars would have taught them, but frankly, the size of the scale of that issue, I don't think it's notable. There could be some provocations. I could even see maybe some victims of this conflict, but it will nowhere near achieve the radar intensity similar to the current war, full-scale war between Russia and Ukraine. And what the result, what they will be reviewing? Reviewing the status of Kosovo? Probably not. Reviewing some details of their inner relations? That very sincerely reminds me a local conflict where mostly it's local powers negotiating matters and involving some of the federal levels to help them do that. And both sides, but basically blackmailing each other about some very practical questions that they want to address. Very local questions like issuing papers, widening the rights, increasing and sharing the budget, and what goes where. So this seems to be like a local matter. So I don't think this conflict has a potential to grow and has a potential to, of course, coming out of that, to distract anything from Moscow. But Moscow, of course, will try to push it. Oh, yeah, they're not even pretending they're not pushing. Yeah, they are. They jumped on that. Okay, so they came and they rattled that conflict. What else? We've been 22 minutes live. About 350,000 are with us. Okay, next news. Poland and Germany are going to start deploying air defense systems, American-made Patriots, on the border between Poland and Ukraine. That was announced after the meeting between Poland and Steinmeier. So partly the cause for that was that event where there were 2 dead because of the missiles falling, S-300 missile falling on the territory of Poland. So do you think that deployment of these Patriot systems will also protect Western Ukraine from Russian missiles, from Russian ballistic missiles, and so on? Can that be a probability? Well, we don't even need to imagine that, Mark. We'll see. They either will or they won't. But so the question is, do you think they'll shoot missiles over Lvov? I'm not ready to say that, to answer that, because it's just not clear. I don't know details on that. Any of the evil tongues commenting on that? No, they're not. They're quiet on this topic yet. I would probably comment on that if we stick to the framework to the general shape of NATO position to not let the conflict spread beyond the Ukrainian border. And I think that missile, which fell on the territory of Poland, taught them something. So everything that will be flying towards Poland will be shot down. Now the question is, where will it be shot down? And I do not have a direct answer to that. I'm sorry. I also think they may not even have answers. The guys deploying these systems. It would be nicer if they did help us and shoot some of the Russian missiles out of the air. But NATO has a bigger issue. They have a huge hole between NASA's do no reaction, do not react, and react in a full-scale global war. There's a big gap between these, and they are it's very difficult for them, just by the way they're set, to make any decisions in relation to subpar provocations. Now imagine that Russian missile flies into Poland, hits something in Poland. Will NATO start a full-scale war? Probably not. They do not have solutions for that scenario. So, unless it is a proven situation with a proven intent, that will not cause any reaction by NATO. So they'll probably be trying to preclude these situations from happening. Patriot is a very effective system, and whatever will be flying across the border, they will be shooting down. Will they be shooting that over Ukraine? Not sure. On the other hand, if the missile indeed is flying towards Poland and has already passed Lvov, then probably they don't have much time to wait till it gets to their border and then shoot it by the border. They probably will go and attack it on the approach. So even without placing a specific goal of defending Western Ukraine, they might be shooting down some missiles over our skies, over our land, just as an intent of not letting them cross the border. I think Russian military actually might stop shooting towards the western Ukraine. They may just draw the radius and say we're not shooting anything 70-kilometer distance to the border with Poland, just to avoid these risks. Because let's see what may happen. If, for example, Poles see a missile coming in and decided that's a threat, and they shot it down 60 kilometers before it reached the border with Poland, then Russian ultra-military society, ultra-military propagandist branch of it, which has a definite influence on its people at large, they'll be screaming that NATO is now fighting together on the side of Ukraine, and Putin will have to react to that. So that's another threat in it. So imagine these Telegram channels, all of their TV personalities would be screaming about NATO actually taking active part in this war. And if we let NATO continue, they may shoot at something else and not just at our missile. So this may actually pose a few uncomfortable questions for Russian Federation as well, and it is difficult to see any benefit in that situation for them. So they may draw the border, they may draw the radius and say do not shoot anything close to the border at 50 or 70 miles. And even that's already good for us. It means at least 50 kilometers of our territory, or even 24 of that. It's already good if it'll be covered by that umbrella. And in some capacity, one can say that NATO just being present on the border of, or the western border of Ukraine is already producing an effect on the situation on the front. Not even with doing anything active, just by being present there, by expanding that umbrella of influence. Okay, we looked into that. Great. The next one. So, this topic of Iranian resupplies is somewhat slow burning. There are two news related to that. Supposedly, Iranian minister, I think, of Foreign Affairs, no, Minister of Defense, that Ukraine, on the meeting of experts, did not produce enough evidence that Russia is using Iranian UAVs. Again, he did not talk about any official documents. It was just a statement that he published. And there was another news that Moscow may get some Iranian missiles, but with a limited range. So they will not get 700 kilometers radius missiles, but they can get a 300 kilometers missiles. And what else? Iran is denying building anything on the territory of Russia, any factories that would be capable of manufacturing drones. So my question, have you seen Iranian drone? Did you hold pieces of it in your hands? Mark, yeah, I had one flying over my head. No, I'm just picking. Maybe you held some elements of it. Why, Mark? I'm not an expert, there are other people who are. So, okay, I got it. Didn't hold it. The fact of their existence, how adamant, how solid is that? Oh, Mark, we have a ton of proof. We already have several dozens of them shot down that maintain their shape and all. Many of them also do not fully reach the targets. Some of them just break and fall in flight. And you can write geranium on them as much as you like, but if you start disassembling it, it's shahid. Now, if it is a diplomatic game that Iran is playing and trying to play about not supplying ballistic missiles or limit the supplies of drones for the future, then Iran is just playing their own part in the public space, pushing back, saying on the accusations, saying, no, we did not supply anything. So, if they're pushing it as a part of a bigger game to take a position and then tell Russia, well, see, we cannot do that, they already are noticing and putting us to answer. So if they're playing that game, good, let them play. It means Russia will not have some of these munitions. Okay, so in general, how do you see the perspective of these further supplies of armaments from Iran? Are they backpedaling? Are they continuing? I think so far, the fact that we do not see new Iranian weapons on that front and Iranian missiles, this is a result of a combined pressure by United States, by Europe, by Britain, because they probably see the bigger picture that they do not like, because it's not about just Iran supplying their weapons to Russia, but also Russia supporting Iran. And, there is a perspective they may transfer some nuclear technology, and that's definitely a threat. So I think that's why there are no new weapons from Iran on the front, neither missiles nor shahids, new configurations. So you can confirm they're not on the front. Well, maybe they are somewhere in Russian possession, but they're not being used. So that's what's important. All right. At night, there was a conversation between President Zelenskyy and Biden. And there were different statements made as a result, many of them standard, about continuous support, continuous supply of arms, things which are usually mentioned in these circumstances. But I think that has something to do with Erdogan hustling between two countries and that initiative to provide for some grounds for negotiation. Do you see continuation of any line, of that old line of... Oh, you mean the one that sit down and do the peace talks? Yeah, that one. No, I do not see that here. I don't see them, our allies, pushing us to sit down with Putin's regime. And judging by those mysterious pictograms in Andrei Yermak's Telegram channel, yeah, he has weird pictograms there, emojis. Yep. He's got, the last one was Earth with some missile. So I don't know, it could be some missiles. You mean Ukraine may have received some missiles that are flying around Earth? The ones that you mentioned earlier? I don't know, I do not quite understand these codes exactly, but I suspect that if missile is present in that context, I think there's a reason to be happy. All right, I totally do not understand what Yermak is communicating there, but okay, I guess it's good news. How would you gauge that situation with blackout and everything? Because there are more rumors about capability of Ukraine to restore everything during winter, and these generators and other means that are being supplied to recover and reinforce the energy system of Ukraine. How, in current conditions on the territory of Ukraine, the vastness of it, how do you think it will it play a significant role in reviving the infrastructure? There was a big meeting today, a big discussion about using of help to Ukraine in winter, what we receive and how do we distribute that. I'm not an expert in energy systems. I do understand a little bit in the military warfare, right? I heard how it's done. So I understand how can they use their means and measures on our energy infrastructure. I understand that they will not be able to achieve their goal to de-electrify or terrorize Ukraine into obedience. Yeah, they can achieve certain blackouts here and there. They may break the country into energy islands, so to say, and it took us several days to bring the system back. But they will not be able to completely destroy that. They will not be able to create that cold apocalyptic winter that they drawn for us in their propaganda. It doesn't mean that it'll be easy for us, and doesn't mean that we don't have anything to do. We need to continue with our efforts of rebuilding and strengthening, but there'll be no apocalyptic scenario for this winter. As for the military, as I said, military doesn't care if there is light. Military is autonomous. So all these strikes on the energy infrastructure, they have zero effect on military operations on the front. This is an attempt to terrorize civilians, and that's exactly how it was qualified by international society, and here are your limits on oil and gas pricing. And Johnson, by the way, sent a question today, an official question to Minister of Defense of Britain, asking if Britain can supply means to Ukraine to be able to attack the launch sites for UAVs, where Russia is launching those Shaheds from. So he's talking about long-range means, and you cannot win the war if you're just in defensive position. So you do need some offensive weapons to create a parity with that. I would say general dynamic is definitely positive. The West, of course, is doing everything 2 or 3 months later than the events happening and when the need arises. But given that Putin's regime is about 2 to 3 months late with the eventualities and things they need to do on the front, that's the window that allows Ukraine to resist, to fight, and to successfully conduct our operations. And okay, so give it 2 to 3 months, and then what do we have? A far-reaching, long-range means to counter their Shaheds long launch sites? That would be wonderful. That would be a very good story. Okay. Another piece worth of discussion. I don't know if you've seen that. There were some snippets from Zelensky's interview to Netflix. I did not watch it. I only read some commentary on that. And yeah, I understand. Zelensky has a very difficult schedule. Me too. So I don't know when he gave this interview, and I frankly didn't really see more than little snippets from it. Okay, this is just another thing to discuss. That's why I'm bringing it up. So Zelensky said that Putin is afraid of death, and he, in no likelihood, will not use nuclear weapons in this war. Zelensky himself turned to that topic quite a few times. Every time I think he was rather skeptical about Russia using nukes. And I think these commentaries related to recent posts, recent commentary by Russia, that they addressed the attacks on Diaghilev and Engels airports, where their strategic bombers are based, and again started dusting off their nuclear commentary. So, in your view, I know you're also skeptical about the use of nukes and the effectivity of that on this war. Do you think anything changed there? Because there were publications in American press as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was New York Times. No, Mark, it was Washington Post. Oh yeah, okay, it was Washington Post, and it was talking about, well, you need to figure it out, maybe sit down, negotiate, because if you start attacking Crimea, Putin might consider that to be a red line and might use Nukes against you. Okay, Mark. Let's talk about Washington Post. They actually have some great journalists there, but sometimes, and I gave them several interviews already, but sometimes I think they're fighting to be renamed into the apocalyptic bells or something like that, the harbinger of apocalypse, because every time they touch upon that, they go into some very far range fringe scenarios, basically. If Ukraine will take Crimea back, Russia might use nukes. Okay, let's look at that. If we move into Crimea, Russia makes a nuclear strike. Okay, they attack what? The attacking forces? They're moving. They're on the move. It's difficult to hit them. Well, yeah, nobody thinks they'll attack the military. They perhaps do it somewhere deep inside Ukraine. Where do they shoot? In the center of some city? I doubt it. They very likely will attack some military base or some technical facility to scare us. Will we be scared? No, we won't. We'll be just more ruthless, and because that nuclear strike cancels a lot of rules on the war, and we do not need to then pretend that or hold that line of being very by the book, by the rule. If they're using nukes, that means that we're pushing back with everything we have. And gloves off. So in this case, also think about it this way. If we are moving into Crimea, that means they lost their capacity to defend their Crimea on land. We will not invade if they have strong defense there, right? So the main maneuver in any nuclear war is, with tactical nukes, you need to come as close as you can to your enemy. Basically, come into the as close of a fight as you can. Then there's no reason to use tactical nukes because you'll likely hit your own troops. So we'll just intensify our push in, and the consequences of such an event will be tremendous. Nobody on the West wants for that to happen, but I also think Putin doesn't want that to happen. We already made our statements in Ukraine that we will not be afraid. You can send 10 Washington Posts to write 100 articles about that and try to scare everybody with Putin's nukes. There was a lot of rhetoric after Crimean Bridge, remember? About what may happen after people smoked in wrong places, after Kherson, after that battleship Moscow. And where? Nothing. President is giving a very correct estimation. His opponent, who is making Botox and facelifts and is building palaces in his country, he is not ready to die in the nuclear fire. And the West also drawn the perspectives for Putin, what will happen to him if he decides to use nukes in Ukraine. He was promised that all of his military will be annihilated if he uses nukes of any kind. Well, in this case, any tactical nuke basically helps Ukraine to clean our territory from the invaders, and much faster. And if NATO then attacks whatever Putin brought to our land, then our infantry will come and finish off anything that will still be moving after that strike. So that war, I can support that. There'll be a lot of communication, there'll be a lot of fear-mongering, a lot of so-called experts and journalists and politicians are saying anything but Crimea, anything but that. The closer we get to that, you'll hear it. And then there'll be nothing will come out of it. And one more thing, what they do not understand. Crimea can be made inhabitable for Russian troops even without us invading it. HIMARS and artillery can hit so many targets there so effectively that it will be similar to Kherson regions. They will need to withdraw. Hundreds and thousands of people in their military will perish under our artillery attacks. They'll not be able to resupply things across the bridge. They will not be able to effectively supply by sea because our harpoons will reach their ships. So you can make it horrible for them without even invading Crimea. You can bring them on their knees so they will have nothing to eat there and nothing to fight with. Just the same scenario as we did in Kherson without even entering. Okay, well, we'll see how it unfolds, I guess. And I think we've been 43 minutes and a half live. 378,000 are watching us live. Over 180,000 clicked the like button. Thank you very much, dear viewers, for sticking with us today as well. Please continue sharing links to that stream, and do not forget, if you have not done that yet, to subscribe to Feigin Live, to Olexiy Arestovich, both are in description to that video, and if you are watching or listening that in English, to Privateer Station, that helps us out as well. How is your schedule tomorrow? Are you with us tomorrow? I'll tell you tomorrow in the PM, because my schedule is very intense. Okay, we'll wait for the PM. And for Olexiy, thank you everybody for being with us today. In any case, we'll let you know. Olexiy, have a good evening. Goodbye, everybody. See you. Goodbye, dear viewers.